As you can see here, this little guy is a 4x4 tank. So today we're talking all about accessories, and if you've been on the channel for a minute, you've seen in the past where with my Pocket 4K, I can really get out of hand building some really crazy Frankenstein rigs. This right here is really the ultimate super slim way to go. I mean, I don't have the BP 955s on here right now, but you know, usually this is how I rock if I want to be super slim down. Just the Outrigger, the little Canon batteries, and then if you want to keep it really super slim, I just put my cell phone up on top here. And the RED Control app is quite nice actually. The latency is pretty decent. Obviously it's not the same results as a $1,000 monitor, but in a pinch, and if you want to keep, you know, super low key setup with no cables, then the RED Control app does kind of come in handy that way. But I want to go beyond that super minimalist rig setup, and I want to kind of walk you through some of the different minimalist setups that I've been using on both personal passionate projects as well as hired jobs. The first piece of kit I want to talk about is the one that I'm most satisfied with so far, and it is this wooden camera battery slide. This, I think, is the smartest accessory for the RED Komodo yet. The coolest thing about this battery slide is the security that it provides. So not only does this battery slide monitor the power for overcurrent, but it only occupies one battery slot. So you can keep the second battery slot open for a BP 955. And what this allows you to do is when you are running on V-mount or gold mount, they have a gold mount option as well. When you're running off V-mount power, and if you forget to check the status of that V-mount and it dies, the camera will just switch over to the onboard BP 955 Canon battery and it will continue to run, and it will still have continuous power. And what makes that possible is that this wooden camera base plate is connecting power to your camera directly through the camera's DC port rather than a P-tap. So I think this is pretty amazing, and it's been getting slept on, so I just had to call attention to it. I know for me on gigs, there's been plenty of times where myself or the AC forget to check the status of the V-mount, and during a take, the battery will just randomly die. But luckily, the camera is still going because it has an onboard battery. Now, depending on what kind of job you're on, specifically talking about narrative stuff, because that's primarily what I shoot, you know, depending on how consistent your actors are or how generous your director is, you know, having that second battery, that onboard Canon battery on there, it could very well save the day, could save your AC's job, maybe even your own job. So, you know, it's providing security in a couple different ways here. Not just monitoring the power to all your accessories and your camera, making sure they don't blow up, but also, you know, the option to switch over to the onboard Canon battery so you can always make sure and get the shot no matter what. And then on the plate itself, there are 3 P-taps and an additional 2-pin DC port as well. So you have plenty of options to power all of your accessories. Because also you got to remind yourself too, when you put a battery on this, they usually have P-taps on the battery itself, and some of them also even have USB ports. So the way the digital fuse works is if the amperage goes over 5.8 volts, it will stop power to all of your accessories, but continue to provide power through the DC port to your camera. So it's protecting all of your gear, but continues to provide continuous power to what matters most, which is the camera. And then if the fuse does trip, you can just take a minute, you know, see what's going on, maybe ditch one of the devices that you don't really need. You can just hit the reset button and it'll kick back on power to all of your accessories. So it's just a really smart design. I have yet to blow the fuse or trip the fuse, and I've had up to 5 devices connected on this at once. So, you know, the power to the camera directly to the DC port, as well as my HDR video assist for monitoring, the Tilta Nucleus Nano for wireless focus. I've had the wireless video transmitter connected on this, and the sound devices MixPre 3. So all of those things connected, and I have yet to trip it. So you can definitely still power up to 5 devices safely, or at least I have, but I would recommend investing in good cables that are shielded and have a really high rating. Now there is one little caveat with the wooden camera battery slide. In order to do the hot swap method with a BP 955, you would need to invest in the battery slide extension, which is an additional $50, but that allows the battery slide to sit back a little further so you can fit that Canon battery on board there. But I just love this plate. It's super easy to just extend it around. It's all metal, so not even this, I mean, nothing on it is plastic. It's metal or aluminum or something, so it's really well built. It's super quick just to put this in any fashion you want. Obviously, when you have the Canon battery in there, you know, you're a little limited. You can imagine if that wasn't in there, you'd really have more free reign to really position this any way you wanted. But you can see just how quick and easy it is to put this around. If you have to make some adjustments to plug in your SDI cable or whatever, you just tilt it up like that and then back like this, and it's a nice locking mechanism. I just really love the design. And then as well, up top here on the actual extension plate itself, there is a 3/8 with area points for mounting additional accessory, and if you do get the battery extension for the hot swap, there's another additional 1/4 up top there as well. So you can still attach, you know, if you wanted to. I don't know why you'd want to, but there's definitely some options to attach accessories up top there, so you could keep building. And the bonus for this whole thing is that you don't need rods to connect it, so you could still have a really super minimalist handheld rig, and it's RED approved. Now, if you're not really a fan of the whole hot swap with the Canon BP955, then you probably won't have to spend the additional $50 for the battery extension. But what is cool, you could slide in there, is the wooden camera B box. And that allows you to have time code in Gen Lock and a couple other extra cool things. And that stuff is pretty important if you're doing like a big feature film or maybe like working on a documentary with a multicam or something like that. So yeah, there's always that option as well. And right now, these little batteries are what I've been using. These are the nano batteries from Core SWX. They're pretty awesome. I mean, this is a 98 watt-hour battery right here. You can see how tiny it is. It's pretty nuts. Now, obviously, Core make their own battery plates for the Komodo as well, but it doesn't allow you to do hot swap like this. These are awesome batteries. These are perfect for travel. As you can see, you can fly with as many of these as you want. The battery itself has one P-tap and one USB port on the top. But, you know, with me, I mean, you have so many P-taps on the battery slide itself, and these P-taps are super secure. So there is that as well. So the next accessory is this RED Outrigger handle. And a lot of people are on the fence about this, and I see it in the forums. A lot of people back and forth. Is it worth the $500? And to me, it was a no-brainer. I put in the order for the Outrigger handle the same day I put in the order for the Komodo. It was just a bundle package because I just knew I wanted it. I mean, comfort, versatility, and record control, right? It has this rosette on here. You know, you can untwist this. It really, I mean, look at this. You can put this in any position you want. But also the really best part is there's the record button just right there under my thumb. There's no fumbling around, just get the shot. Now, of course, you know, you do have to remove the Outrigger handle when you want to fly on a gimbal, but, you know, in my experience, I've learned the hard way that it's just best to strip down your camera entirely when flying on gimbals anyways. I don't really care what camera you have, you know, it just makes better if you just strip it down and just run a P-tap to a little nano V-mount battery and you're good to go. These little batteries like this are super easy to, you know, find ways to rig to a little Ronin S. I mean, I've even shown here on the channel where the original S is really not a problem with the Komodo, even with 2 of the BP955s attached. You know, there is that fantasy that we all have where we would love to just go straight from tripod, full build, and just snap it onto the gimbal. But that's not really a real reality, especially in terms of bigger productions. You know, on big productions, they just book 2 cameras, one for gimbal, one for everything else, right? I mean, that's just how it's done. If there are gimbal shots in the shot list, I convince production, hey, let's plan all of the gimbal shots either at the top of the day or at the bottom of the day or maybe right after lunch. And that just allows me and my team to properly strip down the camera and balance it the right way on the gimbal, and it just makes for a more consistent kind of setup and just a smoother shoot, you know? I'm not trying to go crazy anymore like I used to in the past with all the crazy rigs and stuff. I just know, like, the longer I stay working and everything, I just slowly am learning, like, it's not really about show anymore, you know? Let's just get the shot. I think also a lot of times what people are doing with big rigs, they're like thinking it's going to impress the client or impress, like, make cool pictures on Instagram or whatever, and that may be true, but the reality is, I have a RED now. I think I've impressed the client enough. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I'm hoping that where I can really impress the client is with some proper lighting skills. And I may never get to that point. I'll continue to suck, but at least I know, like, I'm trying my best, and I'm not really performing for Instagram anymore. Do you know what I mean? I'm performing for myself and just to make sure that I'm making the client happy. But one thing I have done that makes swapping over to a gimbal a little quicker and easier is I've kind of stacked QR plates. So you'll notice like right now there's not even a rod base plate on this camera. And that's for a reason, because I just wanted less to take off of this thing when I do have to go to gimbal. So what I've kind of constructed here is my own little base plate when I need rods. The primary reason being I only need rods when I need a wireless follow focus and a wireless video transmitter on jobs where I need those things, right? Usually I'm just shooting like this. I love doing handheld. This is the whole reason why I bought the camera. This isn't really my handheld setup, but I think you're getting the point of what I'm talking about here, right? So the idea is that if I did have to, you know, go to gimbal, right, and I have this crazy rig set up here, you just pop this off, and now that's one less thing. I don't have to worry about having this crazy 15mm rod base plate under my camera and it's sitting way too high on the gimbal. Now I got to take that all off. I don't have to worry about that anymore. You know, you just still have my little Manfrotto quick release plate that's compatible with my Ronin, right? It just slides in. All I have to worry about is ditching this, and this pops off extremely fast. So if I want to do that, I slide this up, I pull this, and then with the eject button, boom, that's off, right? Now that's off. Then I can just go like this, I pop out of there. Now all I have to do is take one tool and take off the Outrigger handle and this NATO handle. And I don't have to worry about ditching anything else. And that's kind of the reason why I didn't really want to go with a cage or even the Timmy ribs, because I just feel like all of that stuff just adds little weight here and there, and it slowly starts building up, especially when you're talking in terms of gimbal stuff, right? So now the only thing I have to worry about is taking one tool and popping off this Outrigger handle, because as you'll see very soon, everything else is NATO. My monitor is on here NATO, a top handle when I need it is NATO, another little handle that you see shortly here. So it's just all about thinking of ways to stay minimalist. You know, you've seen probably wooden cameras, unified base plate, or some of the other base plates. They have to make those a certain height that are Komodo compatible to get the Komodo high enough so it works with a studio matte box or a follow focus, right? But I didn't want to invest in that, so I kind of just, you know, looked around at all the parts I have. I have tons of AKS laying around in my grip case and everything, so I just kind of built my own, and it actually is proper height for studio matte box and follow focus. So I kind of killed two birds with one stone there. So the next little piece of kit that is quite interesting is this Tilta Adjustable Top Handle, and I call it the Scorpion handle. And I didn't really care for it when I first got it in the mail, but it's slowly been growing on me. The reason why I say I didn't really care for it is because, well, let's just check it out, right? There's a couple different problems with this. The first one being that the rosette is still a Tilta proprietary rosette, even though I think that they recalled some of these first ones and now are remaking it with more standard rosettes. I don't know. But either way, it doesn't quite cover a normal Airy standard rosette, so that's one thing. It's still pretty secure though. But the biggest problem for me is that when I was first seeing this top handle in the pictures, I thought this was a second joint. But upon receiving it, I come to realize, oh, it's not a second joint, it's just a 15mm rod clamp. So that's kind of my own fault for not studying the pictures enough, but I feel like Tilta just sort of missed the mark here. And it's primarily because if this was a second joint, it would allow me to do a lot more. Because right here, you can see where the button just allows you these 4 different positions. But as you notice, they're all just a little awkward in their own little special way, right? None of them really make sense except this one. And then once the monitor's on here, you'll see where this one doesn't even really make sense. But, oh, and keep in mind, this is attached to a Nicey Rig NATO rail with a rosette on the end, right? This is way higher. Also, take note of how high the NATO sits because it's on top of the Outrigger handle, right? Keep that in mind, because if this was attached down here, where it's supposed to be, like if you had the Tilta cage or the Timmy ribs or anything like that, this would be sitting much lower. So you would never even be able to get that much height out of it, right? So that is something to keep in mind, right? So this is just these weird kind of awkward positions. What I thought this was a second joint for was so I could twist here and be in a more, have a second vertical handle, you know, much similar to this RED handle, or like what I used to do when I first got the Komodo, this small rig NATO side handle, right? So I thought I'd be able to go from a more of a vertical position rather than this weird horizontal position, and then pump up to top handle for any low angle shots or anything like walking around or anything like that. But I guess it is kind of growing on me a little bit. I do like the kind of, you know, when I was walking around and messing around and doing handheld shots, it is interesting and it is very convenient, you know, like to just carry like this when you're walking around and then, you know, kind of drop it down. But again, it doesn't make sense that it's horizontal. But all in all, it's an interesting kind of tool, but right now I think it's a little niche rather than really efficient, I guess. So I don't know how long I'll rock this. I think one of the reasons why I'm fighting for it so bad is because I did pay $118 for it. So obviously, you know, to me, that's kind of a lot of money for something like this. So I'm not wanting to abandon it quite yet. So I am kind of giving it the benefit of the doubt, but it's an interesting little piece of kit nonetheless. So here you'll see kind of how far you have to push back the monitor when you do have this top handle in the, you know, top handle formation. So it's just a little weird. I've made plenty of videos about this 12G HDR video assist, but because I always get questions about it and I always get asked about it, yes, it is still my favorite option, even for the Komodo. There's so many reasons why, but let's rewind through them again, right? First of all, it's 12G. There's not a whole lot of monitors out there available right now that are 12G. The Komodo does have 12G SDI, so it just made sense to me to keep a camera that is also 12G SDI. But in order to do that, you're also going to need the 12G SDI cable. So that's where this bad boy comes in. It's fully 12G. This is a really good one made by Belden. We're going to talk about SDI in a minute, but I want to keep addressing what I love. What else do I love about the 12G HDR video assist? Well, it's 10-bit. It's also hard to find a 10-bit monitor nowadays, especially one that's under $1,000, right? Not only is it 10-bit, it's HDR. So what you're getting with this is nuts. It's 2,500 nits. It's aircraft grade aluminum, right? The screen is, I don't know what, I don't know if it's Gorilla Glass, what it is, but I can tell you I've had this HDR video assist before it was officially announced, and this screen is still like new, right? Blackmagic Design did not send me this. I bought this with my own money, but I'm just saying I got it from a shop before it was officially released on Amazon, so I have had it for quite time. It's been on tons of shoots. It went on the dock for me, so it's been all over America, and the screen is still like new. So the thing is built like a tank, right? And it has trigger record control because RED offers it through the Komodo via SDI. This thing records when I hit record down here. So you're getting 4K ProRes proxies out of this thing as well on these little SD cards. I talk about it all the time, but yes, those are all the reasons why eventually you guys will understand why I have yet to abandon the 12G HDR video assist. But now I want to talk about SDI because I have noticed on the forum groups and the user groups, people have been experiencing SDI corruption, problems with the SDI connection with the Komodo. And there's actually what I believe is some workarounds with this, because there's actually a way how to connect your monitor to your camera. And this is not exclusive to the Komodo. This applies to all cameras across the board. Even with cameras that don't have SDI, it also kind of applies to cameras that connect with HDMI. And now thinking about it, this probably goes back to when people were like blowing up their monitors or whatever with their Pocket 4K, right? So think about it, right? Anytime I say SDI, just, you know, if you're dealing with HDMI monitor, just replace SDI with HDMI in your brain, right? But there's a certain way to connect these things. So when you're connecting your monitor to your camera, you want to kind of work in this process. So first things first is I'm going to connect the power source to my monitor, right? So before you connect your SDI or HDMI cable, you're going to provide power to your monitor first. My PowerRig dummy battery is regulated, as well as my wooden camera battery slide has fuse protection as well. So we know that I'm pretty well regulated in terms of power. Now, once the power is all connected, then I'm going to connect my SDI cable, or in your case, it might be an HDMI cable. This is another thing I always say, folks, and I guess I can't say it enough. You know, it's like, please do not skimp on your cables. You want to make sure you're getting well-coated, well-shielded cables. So now everything is in. Now I've connected my power first, then my SDI or your HDMI cable. Now you can turn on your camera and your monitor, right? So that's kind of the way you want to go. You don't want to ever connect your SDI or HDMI cable when your monitor's already turned on, right? You don't want to turn this sucker on until everything has been connected. And then when disconnecting, right, you're going to want to work backwards. So you're going to want to kill the power to your monitor, right? Kill the power to your camera. So power down everything working backwards. And then once everything is powered down, you disconnect your SDI cable or your HDMI cable, whatever you're dealing with, and then go ahead and disconnect your power. So there's just a simple little workflow to be memorized, and if you just remember to do that, and whoever your AC is, train them that way as well, or hopefully they should already be trained that way, and you should never encounter problems with your SDI ports or your HDMI ports, right? Again, this is not something exclusive to the Komodo. This goes across the board with all cameras. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is Mapbox, and I still have the wooden camera Zipbox Pro. However, I've now swapped out the the swing away back for the clamp on. So now I have both options, right? And the main reason I wanted to get the clamp on is because I don't really need rails anymore unless, again, I am in more of a, you know, studio kind of setup with the follow focus and the wireless video transmitter, all of that. So that's kind of the reason why I want to clamp on, just be a little bit more minimalist. So then this just clamps on just like this, and there we go. And the one message I tend to get is somebody, one person, literally one person wrote one bad review about this wooden camera ZipBox Pro. It was either on B&H or Adorama or something like that, but they were saying how this ZipBox Pro causes reflections, specifically because of its poor design. And I think there's a very big misconception here, because first of all, I rather think the design of this wooden camera ZipBox Pro is actually really, really smart. So there are 3 grooves inside of here, and not only is it for stacking 3 filters at once, but it's also for when using one filter, it allows you to tilt that filter in 3 different options in order to fight against reflections. So I have this little old school 4x4 filter right here, and that's another thing. The ZipBox Pro allows you to fit 4x4 filters and more standard ones, which are 4x5.65, right? So it has the option for both sizes, so that's another cool thing. But here I just wanted to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So this is when it is flush, right? So it is sitting flush in there, okay? And then you can pop this out and you can go to the second one, or you can pop it out and go to the third groove, right? So that's allowing you to fight against reflections. So with studio matte boxes, they actually allow you to tilt the entire matte box either front or forward or side to side, and that is actually made in order to fight against things like reflections and ghosting. And if you guys remember, when I first got the wooden camera ZipBox Pro and did the unboxing video, I showed where the studio back version of it does allow you to tilt and all of that. So the wooden camera ZipBox Pro does still help you fight that ghosting or reflections in your shot, but it just seems to be a problem with all matte boxes across the board when stacking filters or when using something like a speed booster behind your lens. But as it goes, generally we want to use the least amount of glass as possible in front of our lenses, so I guess it just kind of forces you to maybe not want to stack filters as much. But I just thought that was something interesting and something to keep in mind. So you know, rest assured, you know, if you're having the problem with the wooden camera ZipBox Pro, one might be maybe you want to try tilting the filter in there and maybe losing one of the, you know, not stacking it up so deep with other filters, or just investing in the extra studio back version of it and give you a little tilt action, or just, yeah, figure out a way to just fly with one filter rather than multiple filters. One thing I will say is that if you are rocking a speed booster, it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter what matte box you put on. It's not going to matter if it's a screw-on filter. You're going to get ghosting just the way that that's what happens with the speed booster behind the lens. Then when you introduce a filter in front of the lens, it's just bouncing the light around. It has nothing to do with the matte box. One really cool thing I really love about the MattBox Pro, and it's actually quite simple, is just by simply turning this little clamp here, now I have a carbon fiber shield protecting my lens, and it's really great for doing any kind of run and gun setups or documentary style shooting. Okay, so one of the final things we're going to talk about is media. Pro-grade digital is approved by RED. However, if they're more than a year old, you're going to get a message on the camera telling you that it's not approved. Now, pro-grade digital does offer a service where you can mail that card in and pay for your own shipping, obviously, but you mail it in and they'll swap it out with one that is actually approved by RED because it's newer, I guess. However, when I did that service, the card they sent me back still tells me unapproved in the camera, and I'm actually about 90% positive they sent me back the same exact card. Now I realize maybe I don't know what happened, it doesn't matter, but again, I had to pay my own shipping for that, so rather than just dealing with that all over again, I just went on with my life and bought a bunch of Angel Birds instead. Now I went with 4 256 gigabyte sized Angel Birds, and the reason for that is because in one of the film classes I took, it was taught to us that it's better to have multiple small cards than 1 or 2 really large capacity cards. Now again, I primarily shoot narrative work, so this may not help you as much as it helps someone like me, but the logic behind it does make a lot of sense. So the idea is that in between each setup, if you have multiple cards, you can pop out the card, send it to someone. Again, if you know you need to be on a job where you have a media wrangler or a digital media technician, someone that's in charge of all the media, in between each setup, you pop out the card, give it to them, they run off and dump it, and then you just pop in one of your new cards. Now, the whole logic behind this is actually pretty smart, because if anything were to ever go wrong, God forbid, with your media, it gets corrupted, you accidentally record over it, whatever the case is, it's just a lot better to lose a 256 gigabyte card versus a 1 terabyte card, right? So that's kind of the logic behind it. So just for fun, I did a disk speed test comparing the pro-grade digital card with the Angelbird. For those wondering, they are both 256 gigabytes, so they were the same capacity. So this is what we came up with. With the pro-grade, we got 348 megabytes per second for the write speed and 387 megabytes per second for the read, versus the Angelbirds, which gave us 386 megabytes per second for the write speed and 392 megabytes per second for the read. So the Angelbirds are actually a little bit faster, and they're actually faster where it matters the most, which is the write speed. And also, for anyone wondering if they're thinking, hey, does the older versions of the Angelbirds give you a non-approved message as well? Well, my Angelbirds are from 2017, and I have never gotten a non-approved message. So I would say you're pretty good at least that far back. So I just wanted to make a video just showing some of my favorite accessories for it, kind of how I've been rocking it. And as you can see from the B-roll when I've been talking, you know, it's been working out quite well. So speaking of the behind the scenes, if you are intrigued by anything that you've seen today, if you want to, know what's going on with that, the best way to follow my little behind the scenes journey is over on the Dog Times Patreon. So I break down all the projects I work on over there. We talk pre-production strategies. I give work feedback on the projects that you're working on. We have a private Discord channel that really makes for a cool little community of filmmakers. So if you're a fan of the channel, the Patreon Discord is the #1 way to support. And if not, that's fine too. Just tap that subscribe button and I'll see you in the next one.